our FRS community. He's had the chance to interact with a bunch of families and a bunch of parents so far, but we wanted to give this time for him to give a little introduction of his own, and also field some questions. A lot of people submitted questions for us to ask. We kind of brought it all together to make sure that we were asking the most pertinent questions, the questions that were repeated. And so we're going to kind of moderate that, and then if there's time, we can open it up to the crowd. But hopefully this gives you an opportunity to hear him speak a little bit more in a more intimate setting. And I will hand it over to you.
Thank you. My name's David Mendelson. I'm currently in my final year at Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies. I will be ordained, God willing, in May 22nd of this year, as long as I pass all of my classes. Hopefully my teachers are nice. I grew up in the Atlanta suburbs. I lived there for about 20 years, and that's really where my journey began. In high school, I became a madrich at my synagogue congregation, Eitz Chaim. My mother was a teacher there for many, many years. She started in the preschool and then advanced to third grade and taught for, I don't know, well over a decade, if not probably close to 20 years maybe. And she kind of encouraged me to go and teach in the madrich program. And so from the age of 15 to 18, I did that, and I fell in love with teaching. When I was a sophomore in high school, my teacher, who I was working with, taught fourth grade, and there were often times when she would just look over at me and say, "David, I'm going to go make the copies," which is usually the job of the madrich, and I would teach the class. So that was kind of my first experience as a 16-year-old teaching religious school. I absolutely loved it, teaching tefillah and Jewish values and Jewish history. And then in college, I did kind of like drift away a little bit, I think like a lot of college kids. And then I found myself attending Hillel at Kennesaw State University. It was a very small Hillel, and we had someone from Birthright come and say, "You should go on this trip. It's free. You got to go to Israel for 10 days." And I immediately signed up, and those 10 days completely changed my life. I came back the May of 2013, before my senior year of college. I applied to work at a Reform temple as a fourth grade teacher, and absolutely loved it, and started my journey of really teaching religious school. I did that from 2013 to 2017. I taught in a day school for a year as an alternative tefillah leader for the students who did not want to daven on Mondays and Thursdays, and there were quite a lot who didn't want to. And so I created a class on Israeli foreign policy and the Parshat HaShavua, and so on Mondays and Thursdays we would alternate what we were talking about. And to my surprise, 30 freshman and sophomore boys signed up for my class, and we talked really hardcore Israeli foreign policy. And then after that, I eventually found my way to Los Angeles at the Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies, where I taught at ECAR for a number of years, an amazing community part of the Emergent Network all around the country, and Congregation Tikvat Jacob in Manhattan Beach. Unfortunately, I only taught online there. I've never actually been to the synagogue, even though it's right by the beach, and I kind of wish I could have experienced that. And now I'm here. Yeah, there are a lot of things that resonated with me when I looked at the applications when we got access December 1st, and I looked at all the different places, and I kind of picked my top few that I really, really enjoyed. And I think a lot of what kind of drew me to apply to this position was the fact that I could both be like head of school and work with the religious school community and parents and students on the one hand, but also be the assistant rabbi and help Rabbi Herber out with pastoral duties and with leading the community during Shabbat and holidays. And so it's really like the best of both worlds, getting to work with the young kids and getting to work with the larger community, and really having the chance to bridge that gap from religious school, where a lot of students tend to, once they have their B'nai Mitzvah, they will just leave and they won't come back. And I think it's an amazing opportunity to then say, how can we get those 13-year-olds to stick around by creating teen educational opportunities, chances for them to lead the service, maybe have a minyan of their own, which could be really exciting, and then eventually, find themselves a full member of this community once they are, a little bit older, post-college and whatnot. So it's really kind of a best of both worlds that drew me here.
Okay, so our second question is, how do you view the status of conservative Judaism today, and what do you think will make the conservative movement thrive in the future?
I think we really are at a crossroads in the conservative movement. I know there's a lot of murmurings of the conservative movement is dying, but I really don't think it is. I think we're at this amazing point in the history of this movement where we can find ways to engage the youth, engage the young adults, and really teach and inform about the beauty of this movement, which I really think is so incredible. We're a halachic movement, but we're also kind of adaptable and meet the needs of our time. And I think what's happening in the Rabbinical Assembly and in the USCJ, the Law Committee, where they're really addressing these issues. It's a really exciting time to be a conservative Jew, to be a conservative rabbi, and to be a conservative shul. But of course, it's not easy, because we do see that members are leaving and they're joining other communities. And I think we really have to figure out ways of being more welcoming, more inclusive to those that are, want to walk into our doors. And I think that can start with the rabbi, but it really has to also start with the entire community. How can we, in a sense, sell our movement and sell our community and say that we are really the best opportunity to live a Jewish, honest, beautiful life?
So on that note, what most excites you about the dual role of an assistant rabbi and head of school?
Yeah, I think it's similar to what drew me to this position, the opportunity to share my love of teaching and my style of teaching to the FRS community, and bridging that gap and getting them to be a real part of the community, getting them to sit in these seats on a Shabbat morning or during the holidays, and getting them, post B'nai Mitzvah, to get up here and read Torah, more than just the one time, having them lead the services, and as far as being an assistant rabbi, getting to share my Torah and I love teaching adults. Yesterday I had the opportunity to teach. There were far more people than I had anticipated that came to the teaching, which was it warmed my heart. And so I would get to do aspects of that, really work with Rabbi Herbert to see what the future is going to bring into this community and the entire Seattle area. And it's just very exciting times.
So even with a healthy FRS enrollment, there appears to be a drop-off after B'nai Mitzvah, which we talked about a little bit. What are your ideas about how to harness this great potential?
I think one, it starts with programming, finding unique programs for our teenagers in the community that, educational opportunities for them to dig a little bit deeper into our tradition. And in Pirkei Avot, it tells us that at 13, they become age of mitzvah, but at 15 is when they can start learning Talmud. And if we could really kind of harness that idea that our rabbis 2,000 years ago said, that's the time when they can really learn the hardcore Torah. And Talmud is really out there. It's really hard stuff to learn. But there's a lot of great things that I think teenagers will love. And one of my favorite topics in the Talmud is demonology. And I had no idea that there were demons in our tradition really until rabbinical school. And to kind of have a lesson on demonology, there's also in Kabbalah, there's vampires. And they're all women vampires. It's really cool. And to bring things out there that they might not know exist in our tradition, and to have these kind of opportunities for them to learn about demons and vampires, and also engage in other aspects of Talmud and Halacha, and in other social programs, whether it's creating sports clubs here on campus, or even a kayaking club, whatever it might be, so we get out on the lake. Any ways for them to be part of this community and not just feel like they were here, they learned kind of the basics of Judaism enough so that they could feel somewhat comfortable on the bima. I know it's a very nerve-wracking day for your B'nai Mitzvah, but when they come up here and they share a little bit of Torah, but that's really the start of the journey. When you're 13, you can share Torah, and it's the greatest mitzvah to be able to do that. And I think we have to kind of, harness that potential of saying, this is just the beginning, and it starts with creating these opportunities for them to come back into this space and to be with each other.
An important value at H&T and FRS is inclusion. So we'd like to hear a little bit more on your philosophy and ideas on creating an inclusive learning environment and community, and maybe some examples of how you've done so in the past.
As far as the inclusive learning community, I try to figure out what each student's, the way they learn is, and so I will kind of have conversations with each of the students, and I'll bring different modes of learning. So whether I don't like to teach from a book, but sometimes there are students that really love reading. So I did have a couple of students at ECAR a few years ago that came up to me and they said, you know what, we really want to learn Torah from the book. And so I, along with the rabbi who ran the school, said, okay, we're going to create this class specifically for those students who want that kind of learning. So it's called Ask Big Questions, and we learned just like a couple of pasukim, a couple of verses from the Torah, and a midrash or a Rashi, and we sat in a circle and we had these really powerful conversations with fifth grade. But that doesn't work for everybody. It worked for those specific students. Other things that I enjoy doing is really getting people on their feet and saying, okay, we're going to do a lot of improv games, which is another way of teaching Torah, of like, okay, we kind of had these things that we talked about recently, and we learned a little bit about the Torah portion or this Jewish value, and now we're going to put a scene together, or, you know, one of my favorite games is one word at a time. We build a story one word at a time, and other times people want to be outside and kind of running around, and there's different ways that you have to engage these students so that they all feel that they're learning the same material, but they're not all just like sitting there on the floor learning Rashi, because that really doesn't work for everybody. And then as far as inclusion for the entire community, it starts, I think, with having an open conversation with everybody on how we can be more inclusive and be more welcoming to the entire community. And a lot of that can be from bringing outside experts on how to do this. At Ziegler, we had an expert come and talk to us about how to become an ally for the LGBTQ plus community. And they came in and they talked about, really, it starts with bringing like one of us in who identifies as LGBTQ+, and having that conversation and teaching everyone how to become an ally and how to welcome people into our doors who might not identify the way everyone else might identify.
Thank you. Most FRS families do not regularly attend other synagogue activities. What are some ideas you have to inspire and lead to greater attendance?
One program that I recently started at Temple Aliyah is a film club. I'm a huge cinephile. I love watching movies. I watched 120 films in 2022. I don't think I'm going to get quite that many this year, but I'll try. And I said, you know, what are people interested in? And it could be a Los Angeles thing, but people seem to really enjoy film because you can sit down, you can watch it together, and then you can have a conversation. Rather than just kind of having a text study or whatnot, we can all sit, and everyone really loves movies, I think. And our first event, we had 25 people from different generations come in on a Thursday night. It was actually a rainy night in Los Angeles. And they came in, we had the filmmaker come in, and we had an amazing Q&A that lasted well over an hour. And we were kind of concerned of like, oh, people might not show up. But when you kind of reach out and you offer these different ways of engaging the community, they'll come in. And other ways could be, something I do with the young adults is I create both social activities where we go out, and my next event is a paint night where we're going to learn how to paint, mostly because I want to do that. We've also done like a Torah on Tap program where we come and we have like, you know, a coffee or a beer with the rabbi, and we learn a little bit of Torah and we schmooze and whatnot. I think another activity that I really want to start is like a pickup basketball game, really. And this I learned from a few of my rabbis who said that they didn't do basketball, but they did ultimate frisbee from his first job, and he would play with all of the teens and the parents and whatnot. And he said he was great. He would like really, he was better than them. But it's a way of them like saying like, oh, the rabbi's not so scary and so nerdy, but like we can go and play sports and have a conversation. Other things, like I'm a big video game player. Like it could be playing video games with the students and whatnot. And really just saying that the Jewish community is not a place to just learn Torah and pray and come here on once a week or so, but it's a place that's Beit Knesset, a house of gathering where we can come and do just activities and programs together. It doesn't matter if they're really Jewish activities. It's just about being together in community.
So could you tell us a little bit about your philosophy of working with volunteers? And can you share some examples of your experience working successfully with both volunteers and staff?
Yeah, right now at Temple Aliyah, I work with a group of volunteers for my young adult program for those in their 20s and 30s. It's really mostly those in their 20s. And I have a group of about 5 or 6 individuals who volunteer their time to meet with me and to help set up different events across the valley in Los Angeles. And what I want to do is I want to hear from them. I don't want to say, here's all of my ideas, this is what I want to do, but I want to say, I have a couple of ideas, but I really want to hear from you. What do you want to see happen in this community? What do you think would get you here? And what do you think will get right now we think we have a list of 200 plus names, and it would be amazing if we got 200, but at the most we've gotten, I think, 100 total people to our events. But like, what would get the most people out here? And it might not be a Torah on tap class. Maybe people don't want to learn Torah. Maybe people want to do something else. So one of the events that we came up with, and it was one of my volunteers mentioned it, is that there is a professional chef who runs a Judaic culinary academy. And he works a lot with kids, but he's worked with young adults as well. So I reached out to him and I said, would you be willing to teach us how to make latkes and teach us a little bit about Hanukkah as well? And we had this amazing event, and really thanks to all these volunteers who helped put this on. We had 50 people show up. We made a 3-course latke meal, and it was really, really unhealthy, but really delicious. And we were there for about 2.5 hours. We had an open bar, which may have been a little bit of a draw, but that wasn't mentioned on the event page. It was really, we're going to work with this chef, and it was just unbelievable. As far as working with staff, I currently work a lot with the staff at Temple Aliyah, really work with the communications director and then the engagement and programs director. I think that's her full title. She does a lot. She wears many hats. And I work with them to help advertise for our programs. Right now, I'm actually currently working with the communications director on updating our website because many synagogue websites are a little outdated. Feels like, the internet has really grown, but synagogue websites haven't. And so we're trying to make it really user-friendly and exciting. Like, we want people to stay on that website for as long as possible by providing educational resources. So that's what, on my part, is I provide the educational resources, and then I work with him on how to design the website. He's much better than I am at doing that because he's a professional, but he'll give me like a design, and I'll approve it. And so I love working with the staff at Temple Aliyah.
Thank you. What are some successes you've had in the classroom that you think would work well here at FRS?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest I don't want to say biggest successes, but there's a couple that I want to share. One, I'm a huge fan of podcasts, thanks to my wife, Sarah, who really introduced me to the world of podcasts. And it's very overwhelming when you have a huge podcast feed. But I wanted to introduce that to my students who were in 4th and 5th grade. And my job that my boss told me was, you're going to teach Jewish medieval history. And I said, I love Jewish medieval history, but it's not like the easiest, I think, subject to talk about the expulsion from Spain and some of these characters and some of the halachic texts that came out of the medieval time period. So I worked with my students, I found some materials, and I said, I want you to write a script together in a partner, and you're going to record a podcast. And so we worked for, I think, about a month or two, learning together, writing the script, making sure it was all finalized, and then we spent about a week or so recording the podcast, and they had a lot of fun. I said, you're going to make fake commercials, like if you were trying to get, advertising money for this podcast, and they had a lot of fun with that. And at the end of the year, the entire community at ICAR got to hear the podcasts that we recorded, and they were like, I have like a professional microphone, and I edited it down to the best of my abilities. And so every parent could hear like what they actually learned. And it wasn't just an email that I sent out every week saying, we did this, we did that, and then I would get kind of like crickets, like no parents would really respond to the emails. But when I sent out the podcasts, I would receive comments of like, that was really cool that you did that. And then another thing that I did that I also I had to learn at the time was the rabbi at the school said, I want our students to read from the Megillah. I think it would be a really cool opportunity for them, and Purim at IKAR is one of the biggest events. There's hundreds and hundreds of people that show up, and it's a huge party, probably one of the best Purim parties I've been to. And I worked with a group of, I think, 5 or 6 students who were in, again, 4th and 5th grade, who had not started learning trope at all, did not know what trope was. And here I am. I had 6 weeks, because Purim was early that year, to teach them Megillah trope to help them prepare to read from the Megillah. And then on that night, it happened to be a week before the pandemic shut everything down, but they went up there in front of 500 or so people, and they read from the Megillah, and it was just like an amazing opportunity. I was actually, like, I got there to the Purim party, and they like run up to me, my students, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, David, we're so nervous, we're so nervous." And like I went into like the back, I helped them like kind of rehearse again, and then they went up there and they just blew everyone away. And like I was like in tears, because it was like such a beautiful moment to see them do this thing that they were very like nervous about, and they did such an amazing job.
How will you empower our Hebrew school teachers to be leaders at school and in the community?
Yeah, I think number one, it starts with having conversations with the teachers, getting to know them, getting to know what their individual teaching styles are, and then working with them to develop, whether it's a new curriculum or new teaching resources, to give them the skills and tools they need to teach their students, not just the material, but to teach them like a true like love of Judaism, so that, you know, when they're a little bit older after B'nai Mitzvah, they're going to come back in here, and hopefully they'll be on this bima every week, and we'll have, you know, a new generation of lay leaders. I think it starts with having the conversations and learning from them.
This next question, you've answered a portion of it so far. So part of it is, how would your ideas build an emotional connection with current congregants and prospective congregants in order to impact change and overall growth of our community?
I think number one, what I really want to do is create different types of programmings and ways to engage in the community and engage those outside the community and bring them in and really show those that are not members yet, or they're unaffiliated with any synagogue, how amazing this community is and how amazing it can be once you walk through those doors.
So coming out of the pandemic and with students overwhelmed with other activities, there's an opportunity to improve Torah reading and Hebrew reading skills here. How do you think about tackling that while still making FRS a fun place for kids to come and attend?
Yeah, I think Hebrew learning is one of the toughest things in religious school, because it's really hard to do without, like, you have to, like, looking at the letters and whatnot. But I think we have to find unique ways of interacting with the letters. There's like Aleph Bet yoga that you could teach when they're like little kids. I'm not so flexible, but maybe some of the teachers can do that as well. And there's different ways of like shaping the letters out of Play-Doh in ways that like the younger kids can feel connected to the Aleph Bet. And I think it's also, a lot of it can be helped at home, is also empowering our parents. So all of you, if you know Hebrew, or, you know, if you're still learning it, to learn the Hebrew and then to reiterate it at home, and going through the letters, going through some of the prayers, talking about the meaning of the prayers, which is really important, rather than just, here's the tune, doesn't matter what the prayer necessarily is about, but really engaging with that material. And it has to happen both here in the synagogue during religious school, but also a large portion does have to happen, I believe, at home, to instill that love and to help them continue learning Hebrew.
Wonderful. Are there synagogues or Jewish organizations that are doing work that you admire and or inspire you?
I would say the work that IKAR does really inspired me. And when I first went to Los Angeles, that was the first synagogue I walked into. I wore a suit and tie, and I immediately got made fun of. You don't do that here. And I think Rabbi Artson came up to me and he says, "Get rid of the tie and the suit." And But the kind of Torah that they are delivering on the Bima, it's really focused on social justice and empowering the individuals to get out there and share the Torah that they hear and share it into the streets and into their communities. And I think that's such an amazing thing, that Torah should not just be something that we engage in inside of the walls, but it's something that we can bring to the world. I mean, we're supposed to be a light unto the nations, and we have to learn the Torah first, but then we take it out into the world and show the world how great this is and how we can really evolve and become a better world and brighter world for all and a more inclusive world. And so the work that ECAR does really, really inspires me. And also the work that they do with their religious school. They actually meet on Shabbat morning rather than Sunday morning. And that's in part, so all of the parents are in the synagogue. It's in a gym, really. So it's not exactly a synagogue. It's at a high school. But all of the parents are inside davening while the kids are upstairs learning. And so everyone is there at the same time. And then after religious school ends, and the service ends, we all go down and have lunch together. So they really create this amazing community where it's not just drop off your kids and then go run errands. It's really, I'm down here davening and learning Torah while you're up there and you're also davening and you're learning Torah. And then we're going to come back down here, and sometimes it's the last 10 minutes of the service, and they love it. They love Ein Kelohenu. And so they're dancing and singing. It's amazing that we all have this wonderful lunch together. And one of the things that I really, really love is then the parents will come up to me and the other teachers with their kids and talk about, oh, my kid just said that they learned all of this stuff and they really loved it. That's so great to hear. And it's nice to hear that in person. And it's one of an amazing thing. I don't think a Shabbat religious school works for every community, but it's something that they do, and they do it really, really well. And it's Shabbos friendly. We don't write. We don't use technology on Shabbos. It's all very creative ways of teaching.
Great. How do you see partnering with a new school administrator to empower our students, empower the teachers, and really bridge the gap between the FRS community and the larger congregation?
Yeah, I think that it starts with having a conversation with the administrator, getting to know them and their story and kind of their vision as well, and sharing my vision, and then coming up with different paths that we could create to really bridge that gap from the religious school life and teachers and all of that, and finding ways for them to be integrated into the larger community.
In 2 years, how will you know you've made an impact on the Herzl-Ner Talmid and FRS community?
I think number one is if we can see more teenagers up here reading Torah every Shabbos, and even in leading services, coming to Minyan on Sunday, leading Minyan on Sunday, and also seeing this room full of people every Shabbos and every holiday, and also seeing this entire building full of people on a weeknight and coming together. And I think if that happens and there are people showing up and then we have new members coming in, and if that can happen in 2 years, I would say that would be successful.
Based on what you have learned over this whirlwind of a weekend, what would be your top priorities for this position?
I think number one is really finding a way to bridge that gap from religious school to the whole Herzl-Ner Talmid community, and so for the students not to just leave, but to find ways for them to be fully engaged in the community. I think that's really, really important. That's important not just here, but it's important in the entire Jewish community in America and around the world, is how can we get the younger generation to not just feel like a B'nai Mitzvah is graduation, but how B'nai Mitzvah is the start of your mitzvah journey and your journey into a Jewish life and a Jewish adult. And I think it really does start with the children.
What has been the best part of this weekend for you and your lovely, lovely wife, Sarah?
Yeah. I think one of the best moments was coming to services, both Friday night, getting to share some Torah with you all, and yesterday, getting to be here for a bar mitzvah was really, really special, and Eli did an amazing, amazing job. I mean, his Devar Torah blew me away. I mean, he quoted all of these rabbis, which when I work with students, I try to help them find ways to engage in our tradition and bring commentaries in, and he just knocked it out of the park. It was unbelievable. And like I would love to continue to see that. And then he led the service. Like it was the longest Haftorah of the year, 52 verses, and he crushed it. Like it was amazing to experience that. Where like I feel like, if I had 52 verses of a Haftorah, I was like, that's a lot to do. I actually saw that one of my friends on Facebook posted that they had to do it like last minute. It was like, it's so long. It takes 15 minutes to read it. And it was just amazing to experience that. And then also my adult learning that I gave yesterday was such an amazing experience. It's something that I love doing. I love teaching and hearing from people and challenging people and people challenging me. Currently I teach a Talmud class every Friday morning. I didn't teach this past Friday, and it's just amazing getting to teach my Torah with a community, but also getting to learn from the community. And so all of these opportunities have just been so wonderful.
So that kind of wraps up our submitted questions, but we'd love to open it up if anybody in the room has some questions that they'd like to ask of David.
So let's pretend now, 35, 40 years in the future, you're getting granted emeritus status. Talk about the arc of your career, how you see it, what you want out of being a rabbi over the next few, however many decades.
Yeah. I think one is to see the vision really come to fruition and to see this place full of life and full of light, and to see now, 30, 40 years from now, there'll be a few more generations, and to see like that this movement is still strong, this community is still strong. And I would say, if I am still here in that time period, it would be wonderful to see, a few generations down the line of people still coming in. That's, I think, my ultimate dream is to pass on the tradition, the Dor Vador from one generation to the next. And it's, we can start now with our current generation, the Alpha generation, and then I assume the Beta generation, I don't know. And then like to continue on and to see it grow and to flourish, and that's really what I would love.
I have two questions. The first one is, how will you work with the cantor for the kids moving through the B'nai Mitzvah pathway now? And also, this is very specific, but for the older kids, have you ever been involved in traveling with them? And do you have any plans for that, or is it something you're open to? Because we do have that now.
Yeah. To answer the first question, I would love to work with the cantor to prepare students for their B'nai Mitzvah. I don't have the voice that he does, I would say, but I would love to help teach trope and to help them find meaning and engage in the text, the Torah text, the Haftorah text, and even the prayers, and have those conversations, and to work with them. And there are times right now at my internship where I meet with the B'nai Mitzvah students, typically, every few weeks or so, and it's really just to work on their Devar Torah and to ask questions. And the meeting is supposed to really be like an hour, and there have been times when I've just been talking with them for 2 hours because I want to get to know them and to find like what is their passion, how can that passion be connected with Torah and with their Jewish life. And so that would be an amazing opportunity to do that here. The second question, I have not had an experience of traveling with kids or with traveling with teens, but I have like one of my dreams is to travel with a group of students to Israel and to share my love of the land, of the people, the history with them, and to show them my favorite spots, and to kind of instill a love of Israel into the next generation.
So you grew up in the Southeast. You've been in LA maybe the last 4 years, I'm guessing, or so. What about Seattle do you find compelling? Have you been to Seattle before this weekend, kind of outside of this job opportunity? I'm just curious, kind of your thoughts on Seattle in general.
Yeah, I had never been to Seattle or Washington prior to Friday. My wife has been here a number of times. Her sister used to live in Bellingham. for I think 3 or 4 years. And Sarah has one of her best friends who she met at camp, lives in the Seattle area with her entire family, which is really great. And I think what got me excited about coming to Seattle and at least visiting it is, one, I heard the weather's not that bad. And there's great culture here. I love sports. I don't know if I could adopt the Seahawks or the Sounders or the Mariners, so it might be a little tough for that. But there's really a great culture, and people are really passionate here and kind of open to new ideas. And it's so far it's been a really lovely place. Oh yeah, I think yeah. I think a lot of parents have their children, and there's dance and sports. I was a baseball player for many years. That's what my dream was. It didn't work out. And I think I don't want to say that those things are not important, and this is more important than those. 'Cause I think everything really should be equal. But I think one thing that we should do is have conversations with the parents, and whether that's in person or on Zoom, just to kind of get a feeling for what they're interested in, and finding a day of the week where we could come together to have programming, to have learning opportunities of how can we now go and instill these Jewish values and Hebrew learning and a life of prayer away from the synagogue and at home as well. And one thing that I worked on at Temple Aliyah, and it was the first time I did it with the rabbi who is the head of school there, it was around Hanukkah time. It was about a week or two before Hanukkah, and it was a Friday morning, and I talked with him, and I said, I really want the parents to stick around for a little bit and to have some sort of knowledge on how they can go home and on night 1 of Hanukkah all the way through night 8, that they can make it more than about just lighting the candles and opening presents and spinning the dreidel, but really make Hanukkah meaningful. And when a young kid, 2 or 3 years old, sees this happening, it's going to be kind of ingrained in their brain, I think, for life. It really can be. And so I wanted to create something like that, and we had different packets and information and activities for each day of the night. So when they came home, when they did light the candles, it was more than just, let's just get through these blessings so we can open presents, which is a lot of what kids want to do. And I think having those opportunities of how can parents come here, learn a little bit, and then take it with them back into the house.
So, as presumably Seattle's it's not the biggest Jewish community in the world. It's not LA, but it's actually pretty vibrant, and there's quite a bit going on around. And even just starting here locally on Mercer Island, there's an Orthodox synagogue and some other Orthodox organizations. There's the JCC across the street, and then just across the bridges in Bellevue and Seattle, there are pretty active Reform congregations. And as you go further out, there's quite a bit going on. I'm just wondering what your attitude is about partnering with other Jewish organizations sort of across that spectrum.
Yeah, I think it's super important to work with the entire Jewish community, especially if it is a smaller community, to make us feel that we are one whole community, even if we have different philosophies of how we practice Judaism. We're still all Jews in the end. And I think we have to find ways of coming together for big events, and that can be Hanukkah parties or a big Purim party or a Pesach Seder for those who might not be affiliated with these communities, and finding different opportunities for saying, you can go to this house or this synagogue and you'll have a place to go. And I think we have to really work together to ensure that all of those who might not be affiliated can have a community. I don't know if there's something that I hoped someone would ask. There were a lot of questions about the Seattle area and the rain and the Mariners. I don't know. I really don't know if sorry.
This morning, when you were introduced a little bit, they talked about your experience at Camp Ramon Jerome, and that camps in general, I think, are really important to developing a Jewish identity. And so, can you tell us a little bit more about your experience with camp and how you would encourage kids here to continue to be involved in those camps?
Yeah. Well, I went to Camp Ramon 2017. It was my first time at camp. I didn't get to go when I was a child. Partly I played baseball for a lot. Partly it was, expensive to go to camp, really. But I had such an amazing time teaching. I taught upcoming, I think, 4th graders through upcoming 9th graders. And teaching at camp is kids don't want to go to that. And I had to come up with kind of fun activities I worked with an amazing group of teachers to find the curriculum to teach these students. And one of the things that I did that was amazing was I worked with a rabbi who lived in Tzfat. He came in and we made tefillin together for the upcoming 7th graders. So when they had their B'nai Mitzvah, they had a pair of tefillin. And tefillin are very, very expensive. So it was amazing that they could go home with that. I actually brought mine today and used it this morning. And I saw at the end of the first session of camp, when the kids were on the tennis court waiting to be picked up, the emotions that they carried before they left, and exchanging numbers and notes and all of this, and the tears, that camp was the most amazing experience for these kids. And even for those kids that, there was a kid in one of my classes who got, was very sad and was homesick, and I comforted him, and within a few minutes he was back to just having the time of his life and realizing camp is such an amazing experience. And my wife went to camp from when she was very young, and she was a counselor, and it is a huge part of her life. She's still friends with those people she met a long time ago. And I think it's such an important thing for kids to experience. And we have to find ways for them to go. And even if, offering scholarships, I think, is key for those families that might not be, able to afford the opportunity to go to camp, but finding ways for them to go, because being there on a Shabbat, on a Friday, and seeing all of the people, all of the kids coming out dressed in white, ready to daven and excited, and giving, empowering them to daven and read Torah, an experience like Tisha B'Av at camp, it's such a powerful experience, and it really does stick with them for life. And there's a lot of people that continue, and they're counselors, and they get involved in Hillel, and there's a lot of them that then go to rabbinical school. And so I think camp is one of the most important aspects of Jewish life in the States.
So following along with that, what about Jewish youth groups? What have you done to encourage children to join USY, BBYO, et cetera? Because that's how a lot of Jewish youth or teens stay connected to the community. And then softball of a question, what position do you play for the synagogue team?
To answer the second question, I would play left field, I would say, or right field, outfield. Maybe not bat cleanup, but I still have a little bit of speed, I would say. As far as working with youth groups, I did have the opportunity years ago to work with the youngest youth group, those ages, I think, 5 to, or maybe even younger than that, until 8 or 9 or so. And I worked with the youth director on creating different activities for them to come together and on a Sunday or a random week night, or if it's the summer during a weekday. And to come together and just like being in community, and whether it's around a specific Jewish value or not, I really, really enjoyed doing that. And then as far as like working with the teens, I personally have not had a lot of experience working with the USY. But I have taught teens who are in kind of a Hebrew Chai program, so like learning opportunities. But I think like any way that we can get them to come and be a part of the community and help them, lead davening. I know at my synagogue, every Wednesday evening, I believe, the USYers lead minyan, and it's the most well-attended minyan of the week, sometimes more than Shabbos. And it's like such an amazing thing. And I think that's what I would love to do, is really like empower those teens to kind of take that next step in their Jewish journey and being the future leaders, which is what they are.
I thank you so much for being here and taking all this time to get to know us and let us get to know you. My name is Avra, and I'm curious about your experience, and if not experience specifically, your ideas, philosophy as it relates to interfaith families. Just a question going back to inclusion, basically.
I think, one, we have to find ways of making them feel that they're a part of our community. And I know the Rabbinical Assembly and the Law Committee is working on ways, in like halachic ways, where we can kind of like empower them to be on the bima more and to share, words of Torah. They might not be able to say every single blessing, and I think that's a halachic issue, and it is challenging, but I think that's the way things are in this moment. But I think it also starts with the entire community of like, how can we open our doors and welcoming them, and how can we provide them with the opportunities to engage and to create programming and learning opportunities for them, and to learn more about Judaism, and to learn more about our tradition, our synagogue, the way the prayer service works, all of that. But to give them those opportunities is key.
One of the ways that I know our family has become involved in the synagogue, and I think a lot of others that I can see, came through the Garnim program, which is really, at least it was when we went through, it was just magical. And I know that was the biggest reason we chose to join here as opposed to other places. And it's a great way to retain people and families and also connect everybody. So what are your plans to either continue that program or embellish it and make it even better?
Could you just explain a little bit about the program? I'm not 100% familiar.
The gardening program is for pre-FRS age, connecting with preschoolers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, one, it's a lot of outreach on how amazing that program has been for this community and what it has led to in the future. And I think a lot of it is the parents who had kids as part of that program is honestly like doing the work and getting out there and explaining how amazing this program was, and then coming up with like unique ways of encouraging them to join, and hiring good people to work with them, and to make them feel like they're a part of this community, and make it kind of that stepping stone from that into the religious school, and then into the teen programming, and into full adult life here in the community.
I have a question actually about high holidays. So right now we have really robust programming for the kids that are FRS age, and some teens, and the sanctuary belongs to the adults. And I wonder what ideas you have to potentially create programming where parents could be experiencing a Torah service with their children in a setting where it might not disrupt those that would like a more sanctified experience.
That happened at Temple Aliyah. I was not in charge of that. It was the head of school who did that, who created multiple service opportunities outside of the campus. It was at a high school nearby. But if we have the room here, like that would be perfect. And to provide a space that not you just didn't drop off your kids and then they got some sort of an experience for the high holidays. They heard the shofar and whatnot. But a way for the parents to say, oh, I'm also getting a full service here. And I think one way is getting them to be participants in the service, and maybe not having like a 4-hour service or so, but like what are the highlights that we need in the service to feel that they are getting what they need as parents, and to also keep the attention of the kids. And a lot of that could be with song leaders and whatnot, different ways of engaging in the Torah reading, whether that could be like parsha plays or bibliodrama, which is what a rabbi did actually with the adult community on day 2 Rosh Hashanah, which was like, I think the biggest hit was that, and finding ways of like, you don't just have to necessarily like read the entire Torah portion. You can maybe read a little bit of it for those that want it, but also finding ways for people to get up on the bima and engage in our text. And then another idea that I love is finding as many people to blow the shofar as possible. And like that can be like with teaching kids how to do it, or providing they actually have now like shofars that are easier to blow, which is really, really nice. I need to buy one because I'm not great at it. But ways for them to feel like they're a part of the service, and that they're not just like sitting there waiting for this to end, but so they get a real experience and kind of a fun, interactive experience.
I know that you're going to head off and meet with some of our kids very soon, but thank you on behalf of the FRS community for fielding so many questions. And I think you have about 10 minutes, so if anyone would like to come up and personally say hello, we encourage you to do so. And again, thank you so much, David, for all this time.
Thank you.